Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kingdom Fungi, and this is lesson 4 of our topic classification in organisms. Remember, in the previous lesson we had looked at Kingdom Protoctista, where we managed to look at different phyla and their characteristics. You remember we looked at phylum Rhizopoda, the amoebas, Celiophora, Zomastigina, Omycota, Phyophyta, Chlorophyta, Rhodophyta. Yes, we looked at those phyla. We also looked at their representative species, characteristics, and then we looked at the economic importance. I had given you an assignment of looking for more economic importance of different organisms in Kingdom Protoctista, and I have seen some people sent me. Thank you for those who tried, and if you did not, please also keep trying so that we move on. So this time in this lesson we are going to look at Kingdom Fungi, and I know it's not a new kingdom. Even in primary they looked at Kingdom Fungi in the senior one, and we are just going to add from where you stopped. So thank you very much for liking my page and for following these lessons. So Kingdom Fungi has a number of organisms, and I want to look at their distinguishing characteristics. Remember, this kingdom was formerly in Kingdom Plantae. These organisms used to be called the non-flowering plants, but after research later it was realized that they have some peculiar characteristics that cannot qualify them to be purely plants. So we want to see some of the characteristics that distinguish the fungi from the plants. The first one is that for them, their carbohydrates are stored as glycogen and not as starch. Remember, plants store their carbohydrates as starch. So that differentiates them from the plants. The other one is their cell walls contain chitin but not cellulose. Remember, the plant cell walls contain cellulose, but for these members their cell walls contain chitin. And then they don't have chlorophyll, hence they do not carry out photosynthesis. Remember, most of plants carry out photosynthesis. Fungi cannot. They also produce by means of spores that are not flagellated. Other characteristics include they carry out heterotrophic nutrition. Some of them are parasites, like you remember the Candida albicans, the ringworms, and so on. Others are saprophytes, so they feed on dead and decaying matter. They do not carry out photosynthesis like plants do. And then their bodies are usually made up of mycelium. That the main body is the mycelium, which is multinucleate. Some do not have septa, so they are septate, and others have cross walls, and they are called the septate mycelium. We shall look at them in detail shortly. They undergo nuclear mitosis, and their cytoplasm, nuclear membrane, and cell membrane never divide. So we have fungal mitochondria have flattened cristae, whereas plants do not have the flattened. They have the tubular cristae for those that have. And then so we can now tell that the Kingdom Fungi is not, it does not have, has very many differences with plants. So we cannot group these members into Kingdom Plantae for the reasons we have given. And for that reason, they have their own phyla, and we want to expound those phyla one by one. In each of those we shall look at their characteristics. We shall also look at the members that are involved, that are present in each of those phyla. To begin with, we have phylum Zygomycota. Pronounce with me, Zygomycota. The members include the muco and the rhizopus, the bread mold. This one you must be very much familiar with. They live in damp organic matter, for example in bread. That's where they are found. So we can look at that bread mold there, a member of Zygomycota phylum, and its structure has the rhizoids, they have the stolons, and then those are the rooting hyphae. Then it has the sporangiospore, that vertical hypha, then the sporangium that eventually contains the spores. So when it matures, it releases the spores, as you can see in the next sporangiospore there, where the spores are released. So that one is the bread mold, and that is its structure. So the sporangium, as you saw, is black when ripe and colorless when immature. It produces spores for asexual reproduction, and these spores are numerous, almost found everywhere. They just wait for suitable conditions to be available for them to germinate, to grow. And then the sporangiospore is a vertically growing hypha that bears the sporangium. So you saw the sporangiospore there, that it keeps the sporangium up above for easy dispersal of the spores. Then you saw the rhizoids, which are root-like structures, and these are used for anchorage, but also for absorption of moisture and water and nutrients. So that is phylum Zygomycota. We now know that the members of Zygomycota, we have the muco, we have the common bread mold, and we have seen its structure there. We have another phylum called Ascomycota, and these ones involve, most of them are unicellular. We have like Penicillium, Aspergillus, and then yeast. Those members belong to phylum Ascomycota. The characteristics of these members include the following. Penicillium species form blue, some are green, sometimes others are yellow, and they are usually associated with molds in bread or decaying fruits. So when you look at your bread which has molds, usually you will find some patches that are bluish, that are yellowish. So it is an association between the penicillium and the bread mold. And then their hyphae have cross walls called septa, meaning they are septate. They have the cross walls called septa. It reproduces asexually by means of spores, of course, and their spores are called the conidia, and they are formed at the tip of the hyphae called the conidiospores. So their sexual production is by the conidia, the spores, which have a special name, the conidia, and the spore capsule is the conidiospore. Great. Then we have Penicillium produces penicillin, which is an antibiotic during. Now it produces penicillin. It's cultured in large quantities so as to produce penicillin, and that penicillin is one of the oldest antibiotics ever discovered, and it has been very effective for many years in the treatment of bacteria and other microbes. So it is of a great economic value and used in medical research. Then we can see yeast there. Yeast, of course, produces by budding. You can see those small dots. Those are buds trying to develop. Each one of those will break off and give rise to another yeast cell. So you can look at its cell there in detail. You can see it has all the basic cell structures, ranging from the nucleus to the vacuoles, the mitochondria, and very many other organelles that you can see. And they serve quite similarly the same purpose like it is in other cells. And then what is special with it is that it develops buds, and you can see there the bud is developing, ready to detach and form a new cell completely. So other details are that it is oval shaped. The yeast cell is oval shaped, and it is unicellular, usually one cell, and reproduces by budding. Yeast produces ethanol during anaerobic respiration. Yeast is used for a serious economic value for production of alcohol during fermentation process. It produces enzymes that carry out fermentation of starch to produce alcohol during anaerobic respiration. So it is greatly used, especially in breweries. Well, so we can look at another phylum, Basidiomycota. Basidiomycota. These ones include mushrooms, toadstools, puffballs, rusts. Those are the members of Basidiomycota. And have you ever seen the rusts? At least you know the mushrooms, maybe you know the puffballs. How about the rusts? Well, the rusts attack cereal crops. If you have ever seen the leaves of sorghum or maize or millet, there are some brownish structures that form on the leaves. Those ones are rusts. So that the leaf looks like an iron sheet which is rusting. Characteristics: they produce asexually by sporulation. They produce spores. They have septate hyphae, meaning they have cross walls. So members include following. You can see the mushrooms there. You are quite familiar with them. Probably you might have eaten them. We have the puffballs. These ones are usually develop in a heavily moist area and they are very soft. The toadstools there develop on backs of old trees or logs. Those are toadstools. Then we have rusts, and that's how they look like. The leaves of cereal crops there, cereal plants. So let's look at the economic importance of fungi, the advantages and disadvantages of members of this kingdom. Some of them cause decomposition of sewage and organic matter in the soil, which I think is good. So they use fungi for decomposition, for treatment of sewage. They decompose it, break down the sewage particles. And then also organic matter in the soil to release manure, which is good for agriculturists. Then Penicillium and Aspergillus, they are used for production of antibiotics. They are cultured in large quantities to produce antibiotics. Penicillium produces an antibiotic called penicillin, which is a very popular and one of the oldest antibiotics that has ever been, which is used for treatment of bacteria, killing bacteria and other microbes in humans and other organisms. So that's great. The yeast forms alcohol during anaerobic respiration. So yeast is used for production of alcohol and greatly employed in the brewing industries, which I think is those who enjoy Nile Special. Nile Special is a beer sold in Uganda, one of the big brands of Nile breweries. However, alcohol is not allowed for persons under the age of 18 years. And in case if you are drinking and driving, it's not allowed as well. So you drink responsibly. Yeast is used in bread production. It's called the baker's yeast. It's used to produce carbon dioxide that expands the dough during bread production. Fermentation of Aspergillus forms citric acid, which is used in formation of lemonade. Yes, so you can see the cycle there. Shows fermentation of Aspergillus. Used in experimental purposes, especially in genetic investigations. So there is a lot of research using different fungal cells in research for development of very many products. Then we have fungal causes decomposition of stored food and deterioration of natural materials like leather. So it invades the food and it spoils the food, just like bacteria do, which is not good. And then also it's also used for decomposition of leather, which is advantageous. It degrades leather, it degrades hides and skins and makes them softer so that they can be molded into leather for making shoe products, for making shoe leather. Great. Some fungi can cause plant diseases like powdery mildew. We already talked about rusts and smarts, and this affects plants and even limits their growth and development. And in animals, they cause a lot of diseases, including skin diseases like ringworms. You must have seen somebody who is suffering from ringworms. Others may be more serious, like candidiasis, which happens in affects the reproductive organs of males and females, athlete's foot, and so on. And then very much mushrooms are eaten as food. You go to hotels and ask for a mushroom meal, and they will serve you a very delicious one. And by the way, mushrooms have a very good immune boosting components, and they are advised for people to eat, especially young children, pregnant mothers, and even those suffering from chronic illnesses. Mushrooms can be a very good remedy. So members, kingdom fungi is interesting like that. There's a lot about kingdom fungi that you can also research and discover, appreciate, and report about. So I want to assign you to go and research more and discover new knowledge about members of kingdom fungi, and then you send the information, the findings to me. Thank you very much for following my lessons, and God bless you.